The United States Senate apparently reached a bipartisan agreement on gun control legislation. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's amazing. The Senate usually doesn't accomplish anything unless it's handouts to corporations. Well, you're correct, because they didn't really accomplish much with this gun control legislation. And I want to give you the details. So, among the provisions within this legislation, there's funding for states to implement red flag laws, which is great. Now, there's no mandatory red flag laws being implemented, but of the states that have the red flag laws, they will provide funding to carry out that policy. Investments in mental health and suicide prevention programs, an end to the boyfriend loophole, and I'll get into details on that in just a second. Also, enhanced background checks for anyone under 21 looking to buy guns like an AR-15. So they're not banning 18-year-olds from buying AR-15s. You just might have to go through an extra step in a background check. Requirements for firearm sellers to register as federally licensed firearm dealers, and also investments in school security measures. So the lawmakers in that regard said in their release that the proposal provides money to help institute safety measures in and around primary and secondary schools, while also supporting school violence prevention efforts and training for school employees and students. So there's a lot going on around the edges, but when it comes to meaty gun control policy, you're not gonna really find it in this legislation. And when it comes to the boyfriend loophole, you might wonder what that is. So now anyone who was deemed to have been in a serious dating relationship and convicted of domestic violence would no longer be eligible to own a gun, whereas before that wasn't the case. Before, that only applied if you were married to, lived with, or had a child with a partner. So if you're a boyfriend and you're convicted, or if you're a partner and you're convicted of domestic violence, you would be included in this gun control measure.
Yeah, so this is not half a loaf, it's not a quarter of a loaf, it's at maybe 1% of a loaf. And so will I take 1% as opposed to 0%? Yes, but with a huge asterisk, okay? So they're gonna call this historic. In fact, they already are. And of course, every reporter / stenographer is calling it historic. Historic what? It's historically weak. Remember when Matthew McConaughey went to the White House, he outlined 4 things that were just the bare minimum. Federal background checks, American people agree, 9 out of 10 Americans want that. Easy, not in there.
Not in there.
Hey, move the age up from 18 to 21 for AR-15s, etc. A quarter in there, they didn't move it up, but hey, you gotta wait like a couple of more hours. They're gonna do one more check before they sell it to you. Okay. There was like all of this was like super simple stuff, right? Almost none of it is in there. And so they found stuff that was below the bare minimum to do. And so what's the downside though of that? Well, this covers their ass. And so now both the Republicans will say, well, we did it. What do you mean? We care so much about the mass shootings, that's why we passed this historic bill. And by the way, the reason the Democrats are doing it is the same reason. So that those same Democrats who everybody's frustrated at, you're doing nothing, will you for God's sake do something? They're like, oh, we did it, we did something. Technically, it's something.
And they'll get the help of corporate media, to your point, the point you make repeatedly on this show. The corporate media will provide cover, will refer to it as a historic piece of legislation, even though it just tweaks the edges, right?
It's super weak, guys. It's not a little weak, it's super weak.
So just to really drive this point home, let's just quickly list what this legislation does not include, okay? What is not included in this weak sauce gun legislation bill, gun legislation. So no ban on semi-automatic weapons, no ban on high capacity magazines, no 21-year minimum age to buy AR-15 style rifles, no universal background checks, no safe storage rules at home, okay? No requiring background checks on internet sales and at gun shows, which by the way is huge. You have smugglers buying unlimited guns at these gun shows and then smuggling them south of the border, fueling the violence south of the border. And then it turns into a vicious cycle with people fleeing their countries coming to our border for safety, and then we give them the middle finger. Let's go back up to that graphic. So no banning family members purchasing weapons for their kids. Like, these are the actual relevant provisions that should have been included that do not in any way stop a law-abiding citizen from being able to purchase a gun, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Look, I think the list we just showed you is fairly weak sauce. That it doesn't have any, like, other than banning the AR-15s and the high-capacity magazines. Okay, those are real, right? The rest of it is like universal background checks. 97% of us agree with that. You know, it's like saying, okay, we're still allowing you to keep oxygen.
I disagree with you. I think that list is pretty excellent. It really is, because it does away with one of the biggest issues, which is the gun show loophole. It ensures that there are regulations in place to be responsible gun owners, so you don't have guns laying around where your kids get a hold of it.
I got you.
And if you do get caught being irresponsible with the guns, then you could face prosecution for that. That's actually a pretty good list. And
I would go a lot further than that.
I know. I mean, you don't want to ban guns, like
no. Well, like no, it depends, right? But in that, but the list that I don't think is nearly good enough that Anna thinks is pretty good. None of it got done.
None of it.
None of it, okay? So look, there's one other tangible thing that the Republicans are getting out of this. Chuck Schumer was going to make them vote one by one on all these provisions that are very popular with the American people. Now, they're not gonna vote.
No.
So now the Republicans won't be embarrassed. They won't have to take tough votes. By the way, also, let's keep it real. Corporate Democrats like Manchin won't have to take tough votes. So this is a giant cover your ass bill by Congress that barely does anything. That's the reality. So if you see any reporter calling it historic, understand that they're part of a cover-up job to try to deceive you into thinking that Congress did something monumental when it did something that was, at best, minuscule and incremental. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.